Okay, so. And let me share my screen. I can do that.
Hello,
Hi,
Robert.
good morning, Glory. Hey, are people,
Yes, good day to you. Oh, okay. I'm sorry I came a bit late. My connection was acting up.
oh, that's quite all right. We're just getting started.
I guess you can take it away right away. Yeah, go ahead.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Glory. And for those just joining, Alex DeSherbinen is here, as well as myself. I'm Bob Downs. And we're at the Center for International Earth Science Information Network, and which is part of the Columbia Climate School and Columbia University. And I think someone, Alex Bota, could you mute yourself, please? Oh, thanks. So this is a Severe West Africa training program on data stewardship and the CoreTrustSeal requirements. And this is the first of many sessions. We're going to talk today about motivation and the R0 requirement. And we'll be talking a little bit more about scheduling more sessions as we move forward. We will be having more sessions, and I'll be sending out Zoom invitations like the one I sent out for this session. And before we get started, I just wanted to say a few things. One is we're going to try to have sessions, 2 sessions a month. And what that will do is provide time so that between sessions, there will be homework, if you will, that is activities in which each repository can work on the preparation of their application for CoreTrustSeal. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And is for those who had joined all the previous sessions, we've had sessions where we talked about the concepts, principles, and various certification instruments, and we'll quickly go over those again today in case you missed a session. We talked about preservation, what a designated community is, and sustainability, the requirements for CoreTrustSeal certification, some organizational aspects of data stewardship, and the previously we had talked about the CoreTrustSeal requirements for 2020 to 2022. CoreTrustSeal now has revised the requirements for 2023 to 2025, and so we'll be using those requirements. And then we also had talked about setting the stage for planning to meet the CoreTrustSeal requirements. And so today, our key topics will be motivation to meet the CoreTrustSeal requirements, and then we'll get into the R0 requirement. And basically, we're going to have lecture, questions, and discussion. I won't be able to see your hand raised when you're trying to speak. So if you have a question, just feel free to go ahead and interrupt me. We can go along that way. And I have recorded the session, and that's currently on the Zoom cloud, and we can make that available on the Severe West Africa website if you want to put it there, Glory, or whoever else would be taking care of that. Thanks, Glory. And so for our current session today, we have 90 minutes, and so we do have a lot of material to run through. And so we're first going to talk about progress planning and do some introductions here, and then talk about scheduling our subsequent training sessions. And then we're going to talk about a quick review of some of the relevant principles and why repositories pursue certification. And then we're going to get into the benefits of CoreTrustSeal certification, and then an overview of the certification processes and the certification itself, and then overview of the requirements quickly, and then we're going to get into the CoreTrustSeal requirement 0, and then begin preparing for our next session. And so what we plan to do is to provide each repository with a CoreTrustSeal application template. And so each repository will use the template to progressively revise their self-assessment. Okay, and so what generally repositories do is they conduct a self-assessment as they're preparing their application. This way they can identify any issues with the repository that need correction. And that's really the biggest effort for going for repository certification, is to prepare your repository, getting everything in order so that you can have an application with evidence that supports your application. So what I would like to do is to ask each repository to put the repository name, the name of your repository, in the Zoom chat, if you could do that. And this way we have the name of each repository so that we can create a template for your repository. It will be a Zoom or a Google Doc, and that Google Doc will allow you to enter into the application any questions you might have about your repository's readiness, and ideally, as you make progress, how you are answering the questions. That is how your repository meets each requirement as we go through the requirements. And so it's really a step-by-step approach, if you will, to go through them all. And what we're going to be doing with each session is, as I mentioned, we'll be assigning some homework, if you will, for each repository to work on their application. And then at the next session, we're going to review a bit from the previous session, any questions that people have about their application process. And then, of course, we're going to also move forward. So we'll be looking back and then looking forward with each session so that we can make progress. And if you miss a session, it's not a real problem, because one, will be recording them, and also we'll be reviewing them as we move forward. And so if you could please, and I actually cannot see the chat myself, but if you could please introduce or first put your repository name into the Zoom chat. And as we collect these names, then what we'll do is have each person briefly introduce themselves for like maybe 15 seconds, just saying their name and the repository that they're representing and any role that they might have there.
Bob, I think just to be clear, some folks may be representing hub members or consortium members that may not necessarily consider themselves data repositories as yet, but they may be interested in becoming a data repository. And so just put the name of your center or institute in, and I guess you wanted to have the email address associated with that center as well. We realize that there may be more than one person representing a center, so you can all put your names in, or you can defer to the person who's sort of representing the lead representative from that center, whatever you prefer. Over.
Thank you very much, Alex. Yes, that's your clarification is appreciated. Okay, so I can't see the chat, unfortunately. Are there any individuals who've put in their repositories in the chat?
Not yet. So I'm just encouraging everyone to put the name of their repository or center into the chat at this time, and that way we can start with some introductions.
And for those who aren't in a particular repository and are leading this effort, maybe we could ask you to begin. For instance, Glory, might you first introduce yourself?
Yes, I will. I think I have challenges on the network, but I hope you are hearing me.
Yes, I hear
my
you.
name-
Very well, thank you. Yes,
Oh,
Glory.
great. Okay, so my name is Glory Nelwe. I lead capacity building, and I'm in AFRIGIST. Adimo is supposed to be here to actually represent us. I think, I don't know if he's on the line. I can't see everybody who is actually online.
Yes.
So if he's there, I'm sure he will be introducing himself again. Thank you.
Oh, great. Well, thank you very much, Glory. Yes, and I can't see anyone online myself because I see my screen, and I can't see the chat either. Did any others want to introduce themselves?
So maybe Mansour could introduce himself from Agromet. He was listed as the representative for Agromet.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I am Mohamed Mansour. I am a data and science coordinator. I am based here in Agreement Regional Center in Niamey. Thank you, over. But is Idrissa Ibrahim is the responsible of the depository for Agreement, but is not around. He's in Abuja for this workshop for the climate exchange with the West African partner. Thank you. Over. And the focus point will be Ibra.
Yes, thank you very much, Mansour. Maybe it would be easier if as each person introduces themselves, they could choose the next person that they see to introduce themselves. Could you do that, Mansour?
Yeah, I will choose. I saw Emmanuel Apuku. Can present yourself, please.
Hello, please, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Please go in.
Yes, please. Please, my name is Emmanuel Opoku, and I'm part of Sergio Center for Remote Sensing. I'm a remote sensing analyst over here, and I think my colleagues are also here with me. I can see some of my colleagues also here, so I think they can also present themselves as well.
Oh, yeah, please choose one, and then as we each choose another one, we can move forward.
Okay, so I see Daniel Ampedu also here, so Daniel can also introduce himself.
Thank you, Emmanuel.
All right.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear who you chose.
Yeah, Daniel, go ahead, Dan. Daniel, please introduce yourself. Okay, if Daniel is not there, I know I saw Mary. So please, Mary, introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bashara Abubakari. I'm also with Sergis. And Daniel's microphone isn't working. That's why he couldn't introduce. So I also work with Sergis, and our focal point is Emmanuel Ejesa. I will let him also introduce himself.
Thank you, Bash.
Right. Hi, I'm Emmanuel Ejesa. Also with Sergio as a system administrator. So I'll be a focal person for the CoreTrustSeal. And then I choose Gideon to also introduce himself.
Well, thank you,
Okay.
Emmanuel.
My name is Gideon Bempo. I'm also a Sergis. And I'll choose Eric Nati as the next person. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Gideon. Did you choose Eric? Is that what I heard?
Yes, please. Eric Nati.
I also think his microphone isn't working. So I think Alex Watson can also introduce himself.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Bukubot, and a data analyst here at Sergis. And
Welcome, Alex. And do you want?
Alex.
hello,
Yes, welcome,
can
Alex.
you hear me? Yes,
Yes,
thank
we hear
you.
you, Alex. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
And did
I'll
you?
call on
Go ahead.
Mary and Ponsa to introduce herself. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon.
Good morning.
My name is Mary Amponsa, and I work at Sergis on one of the services being the artisanal mining monitoring service. So nice to meet you, everyone. And I'll throw the baton to Kidia.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you very much, Mary, for choosing me for the next introduction. My name is Kidi Agale. I'm based in Accra, Ghana, working for ICRISAT. I'm the science and data lead for Survey West Africa. Garba from our team will join, representing ICRISAT. I write him to join, and he will be the focal person there to introduce our repository and to follow up, and we'll work on that. I will choose the next one. Sorry. Linda, say please.
Thank you, Kidia.
If Linda is not yet ready, I will introduce Abu Koma, please. Or Paco.
Yeah, thank you, Kidia. So I'm Bako Moman.
Well, welcome back all.
Yeah, thank you. So good morning, everybody. I'm Bako Moman, the co-chief of our party of Cellular West Africa, based at Agreement in Indonesia. So I want to choose Samuel. He has a problem with his mic. Okay, let me choose another one. What about Emmanuel? Emmanuel?
Please, I've already introduced myself, so I don't know which shall I even know.
I've chosen one. Eric? Norte?
Hello, please, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I was speaking initially, but I think nobody heard. My name is Lindsay Bonsu. I am also with SESGIS. And yeah, thank you.
Welcome, Lindsay. And did you want to introduce the next person?
Okay, so I would like to choose. No, it's quite. I think almost everyone has spoken.
Yeah, I think everyone has introduced themselves. Bubs.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. It's great to meet you all. And please, if you could, put the name of your repository or your center into the chat so that we can create a template for each center or repository so that you can work on that between sessions. Excuse me. Okay, so as we move forward, wait, I think I skipped a slide here. Yes. We'd like to schedule our training sessions so that they're at a time that are convenient to most of you. So I guess my first question is the current workday, that is Wednesday, and this time of the day.
Sorry, just I raise my hand. Sorry, just I interrupt. I have a question on the repository. How we should to make within the center or consortium member in the Server West Africa or individually, for example, as ICRISAT.
Yes.
Yeah, we can choose one of the service data sets, for example, for this exemplary CoreTrustSeal repository. Is that, am I right? Can you please just ask a little bit explanation on that? Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, Katie. Yes, what we want to do is to have each center that's being represented here. So it's all Servir West Africa, but what we would want is each individual center to begin their own application. So so if you're at a particular center that's either a repository or serving as a data center or an archive or a data facility, if you could put the name of that facility or archive or data center or repository into the chat, then we can create a template for each one. And yes, I appreciate that question for clarification, Kidia. That's great. And so if each person could put that in the chat, we will then be able to establish a template for each one and distribute them to you. This way we can.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And so what I would like to do is ask whether this current workday that is Wednesday and this time of the day for you is a good time. And if it is for most of the representatives here, then what we can do is we can schedule the rest of the meetings on Wednesdays at the same time, and it'll just be a matter of which Wednesdays we choose. We'll try to meet twice a month, but we might not be able to meet every other week, as sometimes I'm traveling, for example. But what we can do is identify, for instance, subsequent week where we meet, and I will send out a a calendar invite as I did for this session. And then people will get this Zoom link associated with that calendar invite, and we can start meeting on Wednesdays. So it doesn't sound like anybody has objected to this time. So I'm going to assume that we'll schedule the subsequent sessions on Wednesdays at the same time of the day. And we'll choose those sessions as we begin to move forward. And what I would like to be able to do is, as you're putting the name of your repository in the chat, I will create a template for each repository and send that to the representatives of that repository so that they will have the template to begin working on their CoreTrustSeal application as part of their self-assessment. And as I mentioned before, during each session, we'll review what we talked about during the previous session and any questions about that, and then move forward in terms of the CoreTrustSeal requirements. Okay, with that, I'm going to move forward here. And if you could, again, please put the name of your repository in the chat or your center so that we can send each repository or center a template. So first, we're going to talk about the relevant principles and why the repositories pursue certification. And we had talked briefly about the Open Archival Information System functional requirements a couple of years ago. And these really are, they're often referred to as the OAIS requirements. And they set the stage. They were originally published in 2002 by the ISO, that's the International Organization for Standardization. And they also have been put online for free by the Consultative Committee for Space Data Systems. And so they are an international standard, originally developed in 2002. They were revised in 2012, and we're in the process of currently revising them again. And so we're expecting them to be released with a subsequent revision very shortly now. It's an international standard, so all the different international countries and participants have to agree on them before they're released. But the functional requirements are that a repository would negotiate for and accept the information from data producers, and then in doing that, they would obtain sufficient control so that they would be able to preserve and share the information as needed. When I say information, I mean data as well as information. Also, a repository determines their designated community. That is, the community of people that they serve, that they share data with or information with, and that they understand the knowledge base of that information so they know how to provide information that's understandable to the designated community. The repository also ensures that the information is independently understandable by the designated community. And so that this way, as they share the information, the designated community members can use that information. And then the repository also follows established preservation policies and procedures. And so they establish them, and then most importantly, they follow their own procedures. They say what they're going to do, and then they do what they said they're going to do. And we'll be talking more about that as we get into the requirements. And that the repository also makes the information that they share available to the designated community so that the designated community can use that information. And so briefly, I'm going to talk about a few of these other principles that are out there. These are well known within the repository community, and they're a way to guide repositories into improving their capabilities. So the first one is after OAIS is the FAIR, F-A-I-R principles. So this is a kind of a cute acronym, if you will, for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And what that means is we want to make the data or information findable by the designated community. We want that information to be accessible by the designated community. We want it to be interoperable, that is, with the data and the metadata could be used with other data, metadata, or tools or services that are available for the designated community. And that the information or data is also reusable by the designated community. And so under each one of these terms, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, you see there are specific guidelines for how to do that. And I'll just touch on a couple of these. For instance, for F1, metadata are assigned a globally unique persistent identifier. And so what that means is if you have a data product and metadata associated with that, you're going to give that a unique code, if you will, that can be used to identify that data object uniquely. And we'll talk more about those later on. Just to touch on one more, looking at reusable, R1, metadata and data are richly described with a plurality of accurate and relevant attributes. And so what this means is you have a description that is complete and provides information about the data so that people can reuse that data. And that's usually described in metadata, and often people provide documentation as well to describe the data in a rich manner. Moving along.
Let me just interrupt quickly,
Yes.
Bob, just to clarify where it says meta before data. I think implied here is that it's both data and metadata. And metadata in this case are descriptors of the data. So they're essentially, documentation of what the data represent, maybe how they were produced, et cetera. So just to clarify some of the terminology. I think most people here are aware of that, but I just want to make sure everyone is completely aware. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Alex. And those are great points. I appreciate that. And next is the trust principles for digital repositories. Again, we have another simple acronym, TRUST being standing for transparency, responsibility, user focus, sustainability, and technology. And what we mean by this is that the repository is transparent about the services and that it provides and the data holdings that it offers to its designated community. The repository takes responsibility to ensure that the materials that it's providing, either data or information, is authentic, and that the holdings are, the integrity of them is verified, so that we know that what we're getting from the data repository is what they say it is. That the repository has a user focus, that is, they're ensuring that the expectations and the norms of the target user community are met, and the repository is providing its services in a sustainable manner. That is, it can keep the data and information that it shares for the long term, which means that today we might get a data set from a particular data center or repository. If we go back a year or 5 years later, we would want to be able to get that same data set. It would have the same identifier like we originally spoke about, and you would be able to get that again, and it would be the exact same data set that you got before. And then the repository utilizes a technology to establish infrastructure and capabilities so that the services that it provides are reliable and secure. Next, we're looking at the CARE principles. For CARE stands for collective benefit, authority to control, responsibility, and ethics. And so you can see here, collective benefit refers to inclusive development and innovation. And what that means is if we're getting data with help from a particular community, or it's about a particular community or about their lands, we would want to include them in the development and the innovation. So we don't want to just go in, parachute in, as they say, and get the data and leave. There should be collective benefit. That is, there should be equitable outcomes for all those who are involved. And authority to control means that we're recognizing the rights and interests of those who are involved, those who are sharing information about their lands or their people. And we want to recognize their rights and help them to use the data for their own purposes, such as their governance, and allow them to really be responsible for the data. That is, they can be responsible for the governance of the data, for its management, etc. And in that way, they can create a repository, if you will, and be responsible for the data and share it with those whom they would like to share it with. It also refers to responsibility for having positive relationships with those who are sharing their data about themselves or about their lands, and expanding their capabilities and capacity to do more with the data, and as a result of sharing that data, and also being respectful of their languages and worldviews. And then finally, for ethics, we're talking about minimizing harm while maximizing benefits, ensuring that there's justice in this for those who are sharing their data and enabling them to use it in the future.
Can I just interrupt briefly there, Bob? As I was going back to the first Servier contract and presenting to Agromet and other teams about why certification of repositories in the region is so critical. This was prior to the establishment of the CARE principles, but I think the CARE principles illustrate why it's so important for countries to develop their own capacity to manage data, because then you have the actual, authority to control, the A in CARE, and the ability to kind of govern the data. Hopefully the data will still remain as insofar as possible and ethically responsible, available to all for research purposes. But I do think this CARE principle is an important one, and I just wanted to underscore that this is part of the rationale for getting certified repositories in West Africa. If some of you are successful, you will be the first in West Africa, and maybe indeed the first 10 or so in all of Africa that actually have received CoreTrustSeal certification. So it's a really important badge of honor, and I think also a significant step forward to have this training and to hopefully get some of you through the certification process. So I just wanted to underscore this particular point. Thank you, and over.
Thank you very much, Alex. Yes, those are great points. And I would, some of you will recognize this. We talked about continuous improvement before over the last couple of years. And I just wanted to go over this again and use this also as an opportunity to remind you, for those who might have just joined, that we're putting the name of each data center or repository or archive or in the chat. That is the name of your data facility in the chat, so that we can take the name of each data facility and create a template for them to use to work like a worksheet, if you will, towards getting CoreTrustSeal certification. So if you could please put the name of your data center or your repository, your archive, data facility, whatever you call it, in the chat, and we can create templates, which I can then send to you so that you can then begin working through the process of doing a self-assessment of your repository in compliance with the CoreTrustSeal requirements. Generally, though, in going through the effort of either a self-assessment or getting CoreTrustSeal certification, it's really part of the overall process of continuous improvement for a scientific data archive. That is, at some point, you decide that, yes, change is good, we need to improve. And so you decide, yes, we're going to implement some changes. And we want to plan for those changes, decide what changes we're going to make, and then how we're going to make those changes. And as we implement them, we can then decide to be audited, which might be a self-assessment, or it could be an external audit that we're going through where somebody else serves as a reviewer to review our repository. And then we would then look at the requirements for the audit so that we could see how we might comply with the audit requirements. And then we decide to improve. We prepare for that audit. We request the audit. The audit is completed. And then we, again, go through the entire process. It might not be very often that an audit is taking place, but the improvements might be taking place all the time to work towards making the services and the data collections that we offer better for our users, or our designated community, if you will. And then a couple of you, or some of you might recognize this. This is basically a diagram showing how the different requirements for certification have evolved over time. If you look at the bottom, you see the OAIS, the Open Archival Information System reference model that we had talked about. And when that was originally developed, based on that, a bunch of different sets of requirements were established. You can see along the bottom, there was the Drambora, the Nestor, the TRAC, and the DSA. And these were all created as different ways for repositories to improve their capabilities. And out of that, actually, a European framework was established where an international standard, ISO 16363, was chosen. The Nestor seal and that is referred to as the DIN 31644, and the data seal of approval. All three of these requirements were chosen as different ways for the community to improve their capabilities and to measure their improvements against these standards. And based on that, the certification requirements continued to evolve, and out of that, for instance, the World Data System, they established certification requirements. ISO 16363, another international standard, was developed with a very rigorous requirements. And AGU and CMMI, that was a Carnegie Mellon Maturity Institute. They had established a framework as well. And with the World Data System requirements, what they did is they merged their requirements with the data seal of approval requirements. They saw a lot of similarities, but there were also differences between them. And by merging the two, these two requirements, these two sets of requirements became much more robust, but they remained very simple in comparison to, say, ISO 16363, which is very complex and very expensive to implement. And so out of the merger of the World Data System certification requirements and the data seal of approval came the core trustworthy data repository requirements, known as the CoreTrustSeal. And so the CoreTrustSeal requirements have been revised every 3 years. And as I mentioned earlier, we're on the requirements for 2023 to 2025. Next year, the CoreTrustSeal Assembly of Reviewers and the CoreTrustSeal Standards and Certification Board will be revising those requirements for 2026 through 2029. This way, the CoreTrustSeal requirements will reflect the needs of the community, that is, the community members who go through the process of receiving CoreTrustSeal certification. They join the Assembly of Reviewers and they make recommendations for changes that should be made. And the community reviews those, and then as a result of that review process, the requirements are changed every 3 years. So in terms of the CoreTrustSeal certification, these are community developed requirements for trustworthy data repositories. And basically what the community is trying to do is trying to serve their community as trustworthy data stewards. They want to be good data stewards for the users of their data, information, and services that they offer. And CoreTrustSeal certification is really it's a process for cooperative self-improvement. So each data repository is going through this self-assessment exercise to find ways to improve, and they're using the requirements as guidance, really, to see how they might improve their capabilities. So it really represents an opportunity for self-improvement of repositories, and allows not only for internal assessments or self-assessment, but also for external assessments, and that's the CoreTrustSeal certification process. And the peer-reviewed assessments are looking at the evidence of the data repository self-assessment exercise. That is, as a repository assesses its capabilities, it documents how it's meeting the requirements, and it provides a link to publicly accessible evidence of its capabilities that meet those requirements. And then the requirements, as I mentioned, they evolve every 3 years based on the community's expectations and their practices. So we might think about some questions here about data repository certification, such as why do repositories pursue it? And basically, data repositories are relatively new. They've been around, some for 70 years or more, digital data repositories. And before that, people had data in ship's logs and in archives and museums and libraries, etc. But with the advent of the digital age, digital data repositories have been established. And then what we want to do is to enable those data repositories to serve the communities. That is the designated community, the community they've decided they want to serve. And so we ask the question, why should a data repository work in isolation without the benefit of the experience from others? In other words, as community of data repositories, we can all help each other. We can work together. We can identify our shortcomings, and we can also identify ways in which we've improved our capabilities and share those with others, so that together, like the tide rising the ships in the sea, we can all become better at serving our user communities. And so you might ask, will the effort of applying for certification enable a repository to learn about new resources? And yes, in going through this certification process, there is feedback received from the reviewers, and they will say, well, you know, you've got a great start here, but there's more that can be done. And if you can develop that, then you can better serve your community. And likewise, will advice from external reviewers contribute to the capabilities of the repository and its staff? I have found, in going through this certification process, and I've gone through it, Alex has gone through it, many others have gone through it, and we've helped many to go through this process. And each time, the reviewers' comments I found are all very helpful for the repository and for the staff members. And regarding improving the data repository, it is a laudable exercise, and it contributes to the services offered. And so pursuing certification does enable the repository to identify various ways to improve its capabilities, and the services that it improves really help the users and can result in higher user satisfaction. That is, the users will want to use the services and come back and use them again. And certainly identifying, implementing the measures to improve efficiency and effectiveness of the data repository are worth pursuing. So looking at some of the benefits involved in CoreTrustSeal certification, we can see that preserving digital objects offers long-term access for the designated community. That is, if we've determined that we want to serve a particular community of users, we want to be able to provide long-term access for them to be able to get the data or information from us. And so if we can preserve them and continue to make them accessible, they will be able to continue to use them. And the certification process improves the repository capabilities because peer reviewers describe the needed improvements and then the repository corrects those deficiencies. And by receiving recognition as trustworthy by repository stakeholders, the institutions, the funders, the data producers, the users, the whole stakeholder community can then recognize that the repository is trustworthy and it's a place where you can get your data and information that they offer, and you know that you'll be able to go back and get that over time. And it's also branding. That is, it provides a brand for a trustworthy digital repository, offering new opportunities. That is, having a brand as a trustworthy digital repository opens doors to new collaborations. Others will want to work with you because you're trustworthy, and they will want to engage in partnerships, find ways of mutual support. And so there are various new opportunities that can arise as a result of being known as a trustworthy digital repository. And also, once you're certified as having attained CoreTrustSeal certification, then you're recognized as having attained status as meeting a community standard for continuously improving your digital repository capabilities. Generally speaking, after a repository has received CoreTrustSeal certification, their certification is valid for 3 years. And then after the certification period of 3 years is up, they want to renew that certification, which means that they'll want to further improve their repository so that they can meet the new requirements. As I mentioned, the requirements are revised every 3 years. So there will be new challenges and new ways of improving a repository over time. So there's additional reasons for attaining CoreTrustSeal certification, and that is it's a stepping stone to World Data System membership. So currently there are 133 World Data System members. And what that means is different repositories around the world, and you can see the map here of some of the locations where repositories have sought and received CoreTrustSeal certification and have joined the World Data System. And so they've developed their archiving capabilities, and this helps to avoid expatriation of the data. That is, they can keep the data local, they can disseminate it to their community locally and globally if they want. And this way, the data resources stay within the local community, and they can benefit from those data. And also, the data repositories that have received CoreTrustSeal certification and World Data System membership can serve as exemplars for other data repositories. So as you can see, there are not a lot of repositories in Africa that have received CoreTrustSeal certification, but there are more working towards that all the time, including you. And so we welcome you towards this exercise of working towards CoreTrustSeal certification. So we can talk about internal or intrinsic benefits of CoreTrustSeal certification. That is how the repository and its staff members might benefit from obtaining CoreTrustSeal certification. And one is they would be validated as a trustworthy digital repository. That is, the community of trustworthy digital repositories would validate you by awarding you CoreTrustSeal certification. And it's recognition for having improved your repository capabilities, and the repository itself can really be happy that they've improved their own services. Also, the repository is receiving independent advice. We're not just looking at our fellow staff members and saying, how are we doing? We're asking others to be a little bit more objective and to tell us how we're doing. And so this independent advice is beneficial because we wouldn't hear some of the suggestions otherwise. It's also offering justification to publicly document our processes. This is a way we can wave our flag, so to speak. That is, show that we're doing well and show people this is how we do well, because we're publicly sharing descriptions of how we're doing it, how we're serving the community, how our workflow is, what capabilities we're offering, etc., what our policies are. And it enables us to engage in continuous quality improvement. We want to continually make our repository, our data center services better. And it also offers confirmation of the performance of our organization. It really says that our organization is performing well if it's achieved this CoreTrustSeal certification. And it also contributes to the professional development of the staff members in the repository. As the staff members work together and going through the self-assessment in the improvement process and the CoreTrustSeal certification process, everybody is learning and getting better at doing what they're doing. It's also an opportunity to improve the documentation that we have about not only our data sets that we offer, but also about the services and how we provide those services. And it gives us an opportunity for an introspection on the relationships between the different services that we offer. That is, we can see that there are dependencies between some of these different tools and services and the data that we make available through those services. And we can think about some of those relationships and how we might leverage those and improve upon them. It's also an opportunity to find and correct any weaknesses that the repository has. And as I mentioned before, it gives us eligibility for World Data System membership. And we can also be members of the repository community, participating in that community where we're sharing knowledge with others and they're sharing knowledge with us. There also are extrinsic benefits of CoreTrustSeal certification. And these are benefits that others might recognize. For example, it's demonstrating our trustworthiness to the world, to our community, to those we serve, and saying, yes, we're trustworthy. We've been certified as being CoreTrustSeal certified as being trustworthy by independent external auditors who've looked at our services, looked at our evidence and said, yes, you are trustworthy. And this serves as evidence of our digital preservation practices and gives our stakeholders confidence. It enhances our reputation with our stakeholders, that is, our users, those who provide funding for us, those who work with us, all the stakeholders in our community. They see that we now have a reputation of being CoreTrustSeal certified. And it improves the transparency of our practices. See, when we go through the process of getting CoreTrustSeal certification, we need to provide publicly accessible evidence of that, which means that we need to be transparent about our processes, how we do things, what we're making available, and anybody should be able to see that that evidence that we've made publicly accessible. It's also recognition by our stakeholders that we are trustworthy. They're saying, oh, yes, you know, we work with this group, this repository, this data center, because they're trustworthy. And it gives us this branding as a trustworthy repository, and it allows us to attract new opportunities. We become certified as meeting community requirements, and that also improves the confidence that others have in us, such as data producers. If they're thinking about providing their data to a data center, they want that data center to share their data with others. If the data center is CoreTrustSeal certified, then they'll have a better confidence that that would be the place for them to submit their data to share with others. It also increases awareness of the data stewardship role of the repository. That is, the repository has a role of data stewardship, and others can then become aware of it. And it gives us a bit of distinction among the competition, amongst other services, other data centers that haven't achieved the CoreTrustSeal certification yet. When somebody's looking for a repository to go to, either to get data or to submit their data, they'll say, oh, well, this repository has been certified. I think I'll choose this one as my repository that I will use or I will submit my data to. And then it allows the repositories to serve as an exemplar among data repositories, as I had previously mentioned. So if there are any questions regarding these benefits, please feel free to speak up. I can't really see the chat. Otherwise, we can move on. And we still have 20 more minutes. We're not going to get as far as I'd hoped today, but for our next session, we will pick up wherever we stopped here, plus we'll do a little bit of review. So I want to give a little bit of an overview of CoreTrustSeal certification, as well as describing the processes that you go through to attain CoreTrustSeal certification. As I mentioned, we're working with the CoreTrustSeal requirements for 2023 to 2025, and they're going to be revised again next year, and those revisions will reflect changes in community practices, such as their needs, expectations, and these practices change over time. What happens is, as you get better, your repository capabilities get better, you're going to want to further improve, and others likewise will want to further improve. And as some begin to do that, they're going to be sharing those practices with others and saying, yes, we can all improve, get better. And that way, as I mentioned, just like the tide rises, all ships, all the repositories can improve together. And the revisions to the repository requirements they're selected by the community. The community members recommend them, and they comment on, this requirement might not be as clear as we would like, or you might want to mention this as part of this requirement, or revise the requirement a bit more so that it's either more clear or so that we can utilize more resources in order to meet that requirement. And as I mentioned, the Assembly of Reviewers, which is made up of members of repositories that have already been certified, that assembly and the CoreTrustSeal board members, they recommend changes to the requirements. And then those proposed changes are reviewed by the community before they are accepted as the revised requirements. And then those requirements, as they're revised, they become the new requirements. And then as the already certified repositories go for renewal, they are then using the new requirements to become recertified. So there is a process, an application process for CoreTrustSeal certification, excuse me. Basically, what happens is a repository conducts a self-assessment for compliance with the CoreTrustSeal requirements. And this is what we're really going through now as we go through this whole training process. We're each engaging in the self-assessment exercise. So the self-assessment involves improving our processes and then providing publicly available evidence of the way that we comply with the CoreTrustSeal requirements. And what that means is we're putting evidence on the web. So it might be we've established a policy for how our repository shares the data, and we're going to make that policy publicly accessible. It'll be online on our website. And then the repository describes how each requirement is met as part of the self-assessment. And then they identify links for the publicly accessible evidence, such as the policy that I mentioned, so that in their application form, they provide that link so that when the application is reviewed, that reviewer can click on the link and see the publicly accessible evidence to verify that the repository is in compliance with that particular requirement. Each repository completes an online application form, and they do that to record the responses to each requirement and to record the evidence. That's the links I mentioned. And they enter the application into an online CoreTrustSeal application management tool. So it's just basically an online form that you write into. And what most repositories do is they use a template, which, as I mentioned, if each repository here can send in the chat the name of the repository, we will establish a template for your repository, and you can use that template to begin documenting how you meet each requirement. And that's really the self-assessment process. And part of that is if you see that you're not meeting that requirement yet, then you document right in that template what needs to be done, how you need to improve your repository to meet that requirement. And that way you can begin to work towards that, meeting that requirement. There's also an administrative fee that's paid when you submit your application. And before they assign the application to any reviewers, the fee must be received by the CoreTrustSeal board. But I should mention that the administrative fee has they have different ways that you can get discounts. One way is as a member of a consortium. So for instance, the West Africa Consortium might work together and decide that they're going to collaborate as a consortium on receiving CoreTrustSeal certification, and so they would get a discount. Also, there is a discount or even a potential waiver that could be received for repositories that are located in developing countries. And so the US is not a developing country. We would not receive a discount in the US, but in some West African countries, there might be discounts, and they actually have a list of the countries that would be eligible for those. And then it's just a matter of the repository applying for the discount or the fee waiver along with their application. When you apply for compliance, each repository decides as part of their self-assessment on how well they are doing in terms of compliance. And there are two levels of compliance now. One is they can say that we are in progress. That is, the repository is in the implementation phase. They have not yet implemented that the capabilities to meet that requirement, but they are in progress. The other compliance level is the repository can say, we believe that we've implemented this requirement, that it's been fully implemented, and so our compliance level that we're self-assessing is implemented. We're saying we've implemented it. And that's really part of the self-assessment. If we see that we're in progress, we know that there's more work for us to do. If we see that it's implemented, it means we believe that we've met that requirement. During after the self-assessment, when an application is actually submitted for certification, the reviewers, each reviewer, they assign a compliance level, and the compliance level that they assign may agree with the compliance level that the repository is self-assigned, or it may not. They might say, well, we don't see the evidence here that it has been implemented, so we believe it's just in progress. But if you can show us this, this, and this, that is how you do this, how you do that, then if we see that evidence, then we would assume that it is implemented and we would change the compliance level. The review process involves 2 members of the Assembly of Reviewers being assigned to review each CoreTrustSeal application. So, for instance, I'm a member of the Assembly of Reviewers. I used to be on the CoreTrustSeal board, but I rotated off. I'm just a member of the Assembly of Reviewers now, and I get assigned reviews to complete, and they give me 2 months usually to complete a review of an applicant. And then if there's a new reviewer, they usually pair that new reviewer with a more experienced reviewer. So I'm often working with a more experienced reviewer to review a repository in terms of their compliance. And then, as I mentioned, each reviewer, they reassign a compliance level to each response, and then they add comments. And the comment might be that they agree with the compliance level that the repository assigned themselves in terms of their self-assessment, or they might say, well, we want to see evidence of this. in order to believe that it actually is at that compliance level. The CoreTrustSeal Standards and Compliance Board reviews the applications, and they review them. They provide recommendations for improvement or for CoreTrustSeal certification, and the applications can be submitted 4 additional times to receive recommendations for revision. And the CoreTrustSeal certification is valid for 3 years before renewal is required, as I previously mentioned. And as I mentioned also, the compliance levels are either in progress or implemented. So there are steps to meet the CoreTrustSeal requirements. First, we improve our repository. We document that through our self-assessment exercise, and then we apply for certification. So in going through the requirements, we can look at them, and they can help us to identify what must be done, what are the opportunities for us to improve, and then what resources are needed in order for us to improve. Once we've made the improvement, we can document those in terms of our self-assessment, and then we can identify areas that need further improvement to prepare for certification. And we can also look at how other repositories met a particular requirement. Each application, once a CoreTrustSeal repository has been certified, their application becomes publicly accessible online. So we can go online and see how other repositories have met a particular requirement. And this way we can learn from them and see how we might improve our repository, depending on our community that we're serving, the types of data that we have, and the resources that we have. And then in terms of certification, we apply for external review of repository capabilities, and we request certification. And then based on the submitted application, the reviewers, they will provide recommendations. They will say, well, you need to do this to meet this requirement. You need to do this other thing to meet this other requirement, and so on. And if they feel that you've met all the requirements or most of the requirements, they might just say, hey, you're certified, and that's valid for 3 years, when you would then apply for recertification. So I see we're getting close to the end. Are there any questions so far? Okay, I don't hear any. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of the CoreTrustSeal requirements, and then next time that's where we're going to pick it up. The CoreTrustSeal requirements have really 4 sections in them. There's background information. And in the background information, that's where you provide context, and that we refer to as R0. And that's the first area that we're going to be going over. The next section is organizational information. And these requirements, they're 1 through 6, and they look at the mission and scope, how we manage rights, the continuity of service that's provided, the legal and ethical requirements and how we meet those, the governance and the resources available by the repository, and its expertise and the guidance that it receives. In the next section, it's digital object management, where it's looking at how we are managing digital objects. Okay, so things like authenticity and the provenance, how that's recorded, how the deposit process works and the appraisal of resources that are deposited, the plan for preservation, how quality is assured by the repository workflows, and then how discovery and identification is facilitated by the repository, and how reuse is enabled by the repository. And then the last section is technology. And that's looking at our storage capabilities. That is where we're storing the data and all of the resources that we provide, the technical infrastructure for doing that, and how we provide security for the resources that we offer. Okay, and then looking at R0, and we just have a few minutes left here, so I'm just going to briefly talk about this. It's where we have general information about the repository, where we talk about our RE3 data identifier, the type of repository, and we would just select amongst the different types, either a generalist or a specialist. And we describe the scope of our repository. We provide a brief overview of our repository and a brief description of that. I want to focus in now, moving ahead a bit, on R0, just to show you some of the things that we're talking about here. So for R0, we give general information about the repository. And one of the first things that we want to talk about is the RE3 data identifier. And so each repository would want to get an RE3 identifier for its repository. And RE3 data is they have a website. It's called re3data.org, and there you can register your repository and describe it. And let me just move forward a little bit here. So RE3 data stands for Registry of Research Data Repositories, and it's really an internationally recognized global registry of repositories. So in there, you would include the title of your repository, the subjects that are covered by the content of the repository, the different context types, the content types, the country where the repository is located, and a brief narrative description of the repository. So you see the URL for that. So what I would like to do, we're out of time now, is to ask each repository to take a look at re3data.org for your homework, and just talk amongst yourselves how you might describe your repository in there. And so for example, let me see if I can show you a brief example of that. Let's see here. So if you go to re3data.org and look at /suggest at that URL, that's basically the application form where you would describe your repository. But you might want to first go to re3data.org and search for other repositories and look at how they've described theirs. So for homework, I ask you to please just take a look at re3data.org, look at other repositories and how they describe themselves, and start to think about and discuss within your repository how you would describe your repository, so that you'll be able to describe your repository and register it in re3 data. And when you do that, you will get and some of you might already have been registered with re3 data, but you get basically they give you a web page there, and you'll see when you look and do a search in re3 data, you'll see that there are many repositories, and you can look at each one's web page. And so if you could do that to prepare for next session, then we will have begun the process of meeting the requirements for R0. And so I'm going to be sending out a calendar invite for another Wednesday. It won't be next week. I have to determine whether it'll be the following week or the one after that, based on my schedule and Alex's schedule. And what we'll do is we'll send around the calendar invite for the next session. Well, in the next session, we're going to have a little review of some of the things we talked about in this section. And then we're going to go into R0 into more detail. Hopefully, we'll have templates for each repository. And based on those templates, then each repository can then begin working on their self-assessment. Anyway, I want to thank all of you for your attention. This has really been a great session. I appreciate all of your participation, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. So if you haven't already done so, before you leave, please put the name of your repository in the chat, and I will create a template for each repository based on that name, and then send them to you. I see Mansour raised his hand. Mansour,
Yeah,
go ahead, please.
yeah. Thank you. And really, we need the document for the PowerPoint. Yeah, this is training, but we need to have the document in order to read it and to understand better, because I am sure that we have some area we don't get it, but with this document, perhaps we'll, and if you have a further question, next session we'll ask. That is my suggestion. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for that, Mansour. Yes, I'm going to be sharing the document with each of the participants who received the calendar invites from me. If you didn't, if you joined without getting the calendar invite, please put your email address in the chat along with the name of your repository, so that I might send the invite to you for the next session, as well as the slides from this session. And as I mentioned, we recorded the session, and so we're going to make that available. I guess that will be through the organizers of Severe West Africa. They'll be doing that, and they can make that available on the Severe West Africa website, and so that you can review this session, or you can review the slides at your leisure. And we're looking forward to talking to each of you again. And I want to thank all of you for all of your participation in this session. This has been a really great session. And I want to wish you all a nice day. And again, I'm looking forward to seeing you again soon. Kitty, I see your hand is raised. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for this chance. Look, the training starts really midday in West Africa, like 12 GMT. That will be, I'm afraid, like I myself, like we not to miss lunchtime, maybe let's try to have a lunch, and maybe if it starts 13 GMT for the next session, if it is okay for you.
Okay, I don't know what time that would be. What time is it now, GMT?
It's 13:37 GMT.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
13:37 GMT.
So is it already?
Like half past 1 p.m.
Oh, okay. So you would like to start an hour earlier?
Yeah, yeah.
I see. Oh, okay. Yeah, it gets early in the morning for me, but I think we can try that. Yes. I can try to do that. If that doesn't work out, would it be possible to maybe start after your lunch?
That's maybe a better option. Thank you.
Oh, okay. We'll have to look into that too then. So we'll be discussing that as we move forward. And thank you very much for raising that issue, Idia. And anyway, again, I want to thank all of you for your participation, and I will go ahead and stop the recording now.